Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, welcome to my channel. So today we'll be discussing the second portion of Rule 2. So the following rules will be applicable if the current earnings and profits are less than the total distribution. Don't forget that in the last video, we treated a situation whereby the current earnings and profits are greater than or equal to 0. But in this situation, we're now looking at what happens if the current earnings and profits is less than 0. So the first step is for you to reduce accumulated earnings and profits by amount of current earnings and profits deficit incurred as at the time of the first distribution. An example will help to understand this better. The next step is to allocate the accumulated earnings and profits to the first distribution as available. So don't forget that when you're dealing with accumulated earnings and profits, you do it on a first come, first served basis. You don't have to prorate amongst the distribution or between the distributions. You just treat it on a first come, first served basis. So you do it for each distribution step by step. So in this example, New Corp has deficit current earnings and profits of $200,000, and it also has accumulated earnings and profits of $500,000. And two distributions were made to one shareholder: $100,000 in the first quarter, $200,000 in the second quarter. So how do you go about this? The first step is for you to identify the amount of current earnings and profits deficit that was incurred. Now, the first distribution was made in the first quarter. So if we're going by this method, you will do 1/4 times 200,000. That gives 50,000. So that means as at the first quarter, the amount of current earnings and profit that had been incurred was 50,000. So you subtract that amount from the 200,000 current earnings and profit. So you'll be left with 150,000 current earnings and profits. So going by the first step, you reduce the accumulated earnings and profit by this amount. That's 500,000 minus 50,000. So we're left with 450,000 accumulated earnings and profits. Then the next step is for you to go to the first distribution. Like I said, it's on a first come, first served basis. So the first distribution that was made was 100,000. So you reduce the accumulated earnings and profits by 100,000. So that's 450,000 minus 100,000. The accumulated earnings and profits will now be 350,000. So we're done with the first distribution. That means all of the first distribution is a dividend out of accumulated earnings and profits. Before moving on to the second distribution, you repeat the first step. So step 1 was to reduce accumulated earnings and profits by the amount of current earnings and profits deficit incurred. And we already established that the amount of current earnings and profits incurred was 50,000. So now we're left with accumulated earnings and profits of 350,000. So that's 350,000 minus 50,000. So the accumulated earnings and profits will now be 300,000. Step 2 is for you to take the second distribution that was made and reduce the accumulated earnings and profits by the amount of the second distribution. The second distribution was 200,000. So that means accumulated earnings and profits 300,000 minus second distribution 200,000. Thus, we're left with 100,000 accumulated earnings and profits. And don't forget that we also reduced the current earnings and profits too. So that's 150,000. The deficit we had minus 50,000. So the current earnings and profits left will be deficit 100,000. As for the second distribution, 200,000, all of it will be dividend out of current earnings and profit, out of accumulated earnings and profits. So the results are shown on the next slide. So distribution 1, which was 100,000, all of it will be dividend out of accumulated earnings and profits. Distribution 2, which was 200,000, all of it was a dividend out of accumulated earnings and profits. So the accumulated earnings and profits for the next year will be 0. That's 100,000 accumulated earnings and profits minus the deficit 100,000 current earnings and profits. So we're left with 0. I hope this video was helpful. Kindly subscribe and continue to like. Thank you. Have a nice one. So this is a picture of the solution to the problem we just solved.